With the current world order collapsing, you need to prepare for the future if you want to save your own ass. Society will look like a pyramid in the same way feudalism and capitalism looked like pyramids too. So let's go through every single layer. The UBI CAC. UBI stands for Universal Basic Income and will be the fate of most of you if you live in a first world Western country. This literally means you just have to stay at home and you will get paid to play video games, and the entertainment of the future will be exponentially better than what we have right now. It's very likely that more and more drugs will be legalized and using them will become completely normal. So where's the problem? Isn't this supposed to be the final goal of humanity? The problem is you will get barely paid enough to just be quiet and not rise up against those in power. The only food you will be able to afford will be low quality slop, and you will slowly morph into an atomized loser with depression and no real friends. Your parents will tell you how back in their days it was completely normal for an average guy to just afford to travel once a year and how they have been eating meat every single day. And you are just sitting there and slowly understanding that with your shitty UBI payments you will never be able to afford anything. Those will only be enough to fulfill your duty as a professional full-time consumer, because someone has to keep buying all these bullshit products, and it's you. And if the system detects that you are depressed and unhappy, you will be volunteered into mandatory subscription medicine and bullshit therapy, which doesn't work and is a scam. And why is it a scam? Because your brain is simply not made to live in such a dystopian piece of shit system, and no amount of therapy can change it. And if your so-called therapist finds out that you have the wrong political views, you will simply lose access to UBI. And then you have to live like one of these groups, which I'm going to describe later. Your only way out of UBI is by hoping that the meme coin which you bought 2 months ago will allow you to escape into one of the better groups. But in reality it won't. Most of the time you will just gamble away all your money if you haven't spent it already on food, weed and cam girls. And the worst part about all of this is that most UBI cucks will actually defend this lifestyle because they simply don't know anything else, and that's really sad. So for what reason does the system keep the UBI cuck around at all? The answer is pretty simple. Rich people need some form of buffer zone between themselves and all the other groups which are actually dangerous. The demigod. They live in the safest and cleanest places on earth and are the logical evolution of what is today considered to be the ultra rich. They will breathe clean air, drink clean uncontaminated water and eat real actual food. These people are the first one to benefit from new breakthroughs in medicine and will likely be the only people who can ever afford them. Because in contrast to you, the UBI cuck who is surviving with subscription-based bullshit medicine, the super rich will get real and permanent cures for all diseases. And if you keep these tiers of medicine in place for a few generations, especially with advances in biotech and genetics, the rich will start to transform into a superior type of Homo sapiens. They will live significantly longer than a depressed UBI cuck, and being healthy will be the biggest flex in the future. So if you see somebody who still looks young and doesn't depend on pills and can even walk with a straight posture, he has to be rich. It will be the only explanation. But one of the biggest advantages of the rich is that they control the tech. And while your Neuralink will be cucked, the rich will enjoy full access to uncensored technology. While you spend your time getting a shitty education from a bullshit AI school, the rich have real teachers and are able to network with other rich people from a very early age. And the worst part is every time you complain, the rich will simply blame AI. Oh, but it's not our fault that AI, which we own, control and program, is acting in our best interest. The real problem is actually that you don't trust the data, and the data is never wrong. The tech worker. They are responsible for maintaining the system and live in one of the cleaner areas, even if only as an additional buffer zone to shield the rich. And while the tech worker has a much higher living standard than a UBI cuck, they have even less autonomy and will get kicked out very quickly publicly for even the slightest misbehavior or for just having the wrong political views. The worst part about this is that this group is applying most of the punishment to themselves. They peer pressure each other into taking pointless psychiatric drugs and into going to bullshit therapy where they get trained to agree with the system, and then they spend all their energy on shaming everybody else who disagrees with their retarded worldview. The underclass. This is the future for most migrants which are coming to first world countries. The purpose of these people, at least in the past, was to be exploited because they have less rights and no citizenship. But in Europe, where pretty much all of them get instant citizenship with free unlimited welfare payments, it makes absolutely zero sense to import these huge amounts of people. Especially not when we are moving into a world where all the work is automated. At the same time, there is absolutely zero assimilation going on, and this is by design. This is intentional. Because if you have a group of people which doesn't integrate, you will see the formation of parallel societies. They have their own shops, their own rules, and can spend their entire lives there without ever learning the country's native language. When these people escape their home countries, they always go to the best of the best. They don't want to live in Slovakia or Latvia. They choose countries like Germany because for whatever reason they believe when they arrive there, everybody will buy a house, drive a Mercedes, and their children will all become doctors. But since this is absolutely not what is going to happen, the disappointment in these groups will just intensify. Sooner or later, some of these people start showing their frustration in more or less extreme ways. Of course, the media will pick it up and pour even more fuel into the fire. All of this will be exacerbated by the fundamental incompatibility between cultures. And this is intentional by design. Otherwise, they will import people from more compatible cultures. And because crime leads to poverty, especially inside those parallel societies, the situation there will just continue to spiral downwards. Occasionally, some of the violence will spill out into other zones and maybe kill a few UBI cucks. But that's a sacrifice the system is willing to make to keep the people scared and divided. The global poor. They end up living in the dirtiest and most dangerous areas of the planet and are surrounded by endless wars and conflicts. These are the places where massive amounts of rare earth minerals are located. Their lifestyle may already be the reality for many people in the global south, but even for them it will get worse. Zones like these will even start to emerge in parts of Europe, and they are likely to become hubs for global narco-trafficking. Small independents. They can afford to live in the cleaner zones of the coming world and are the logical evolution of what we know today as the influencer class. Many of them will own a lot of land with an army of robots which allows them to produce their own food. Most of these people will be the leaders of massive communities, which will be one of the biggest assets in the future. Because communities like that will increasingly become more and more like cults. In the 2000s, the time when the internet was really going mainstream, cults were actually dying because new information became more and more available. But now, 2 decades later, information just doesn't matter anymore. Which means we live in times where cults are possible again. Movements based on belief will go through the roof. And who will follow these cults and give them all their money? Exactly, UBI cucks. The elites at the very top don't want to waste resources to fight all these small independents, so they rather collaborate where they can. This is why small independents are able to buy elite technology and healthcare.